That fills my heart with joy. When I used to work for Transport Scotland and the Scottish Government, we all went around with our fingers in our ears saying, la, 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 I'm only interested in my particular policy area and everybody else can go away. So I was about electric vehicles and sustainable transport, didn't care about renewable energy, couldn't care less about skills, education, don't care, not interested, electric vehicles. Charge points in the ground, everybody's happy. And now we've got a proper approach, a vertically integrated approach to how we manage policy in transport. And it's a brilliant, brilliant thing to see. So thank you, Richard. Hold everything, mate. He's keen, isn't he? He's keen. Next up, we have the legend that is Richard Parker. Richard, keen as mustard. Yeah, you just got... I am toying with you, darling. Richard Parker, Corporate Sales Manager for Webfleet Solutions. Data and insights and knowing what you know. And he's just going to plug in a thing.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. When I was considering my opening thoughts for today, I said it would be a privilege to come here when John asked me. Actually sitting here for this whole morning, I'm going to add some words, which is inspirational, and also just how much action-orientated things are on the go in Scotland. So, you know, it is absolutely amazing to stand here today and listen to some of these things. So, briefly, who am I? Well, I'm Richard Parker. I've worked at Webfleet Solutions for 2 years. Prior to that, I did 20 years in the vehicle industry, predominantly fleet funding and fleet policy making. I joined Webfleet 2 years ago. They are owned by Bridgestone Corporation, which may seem a bit strange, a tyre manufacturer ordering a telematics solution, but actually when you understand that that Bridgestone operate on a 50-year strategy, and we're currently in the one leading to 2050, they recognise that mobility and rubber on the road will look incredibly different from where it does today, so they have acquired the digital capabilities to help them go through that transition. So as I said, John asked me to come and speak today, primarily because for the last 18 months, I have been working with Oxford City Council in a big context around data, and John mentioned the word. We've talked about data a lot today, but it actually, really, the real benefit is the insight that comes from that data. So we're going to go through something that we have developed in Oxford over the last 18 months, the practical applications of how they're going to reach their target of 50% of their operating fleet, and we are talking commercial vehicles, we're talking plant, mowers, tractors, you name it, it's what a council needs to operate. They have a target of 50% of that transition by 2025, which is no mean feat given perhaps some of the challenges with the availability of certain commercial vehicles to do certain jobs. So as I said, over the last 18 months, we've developed this core four-stage strategy. And the first one is around recognising that there isn't actually a vehicle to do every job that is zero emissions free at this point in time. So it's been mentioned by the Minister as well. It's about looking at the jobs that are being done, the journeys that are being done, and all of the metrics that are around decarbonising the fleet on an existing basis and taking that CO2 out of the existing fleet. It's then about looking at the planning phase for which vehicles can come in and what data we can provide them to allow them to see where the low-hanging fruit are today, where the next stage come in terms of perhaps the more difficult ones, and allowing them to make that change with the risks fully understood and known, whether that's an easy switch or perhaps a change to operation to make that vehicle fit for purpose in the environment they operate. Third one, this is not telematics orientated, but most drivers on the roads will not have had any driver training of any note since the day they passed the driving test. And there's a recognition here that actually electric vehicles are new technologies, and training that driver before they get the keys to the vehicle is a wise thing to do to make sure the efficiencies and the best use of that vehicle are achieved. And then finally, and we talked about it this morning, measures. How do we know that when that vehicle has been brought on, and most Oxford in particular are now analysing their acquisition of electric vehicles based on a total cost of ownership model. So that's looking at everything from the purchase cost to the fuel, to the insurance, to the maintenance. That's how they're making it work. Actually, the key component is then the driver who gets in that vehicle and the behaviour of his right foot to the performance of that vehicle. So that's the kind of things we're going to look at today. So let's dip into the next slide, which is around the current fleet. Now, most fleets in telematics will set up their reporting and their metrics in the dashboard to look at driver behaviour, harsh braking, harsh steering. You know, the metrics about we want to pound that driver and make sure he's doing the best that we can. And actually what we've done with Oxford is we've flipped that on its head a bit, getting the same results with better driver behaviour, but we're now looking at sustainability metrics. So the way that we collect data from a vehicle, we can give the carbon output for that fleet. We can track how it's performing in terms of is that reducing, and we can see the daily and the trip mileages. So the leadership teams there are seeing slightly different metrics that allow them to have a coaching conversation with their maintenance teams, with their building services teams, that is a different narrative, but achieving the same result of a better running fleet. So next, the planning phase. So all telematics businesses, we collect the trips, we do all that data analysis. You know, it's a fairly easy thing to achieve in terms of standard telematics provision. What I think we're doing well at Webfleet at the moment is we're actually built a report that allows the council, allows Oxford, to feed in a particular vehicle type against a use case for that use site, whether it's a tipper, whether it's a digger or a refuse lorry, and actually against what they're looking at, and we'll say whether that is fit for purpose and it can do the job. There are other layers on top. Let's not pretend it's not more than just the trips, but it's potentially around where it can charge. There's other infrastructure considerations, and it's an acknowledgement that we are only one part of the jigsaw that Oxford have brought in terms of analysis, but this is certainly a key component for understanding where the easy wins are to bring these vehicles in. It also helps them build a business case. Because we can actually collect what CO2s these vehicles are actually producing, that becomes a tangible saving when that vehicle has then moved over into an electric vehicle. So we can help them with the business case. Okay, driver training. So getting into the electric vehicle. We've produced this, we've worked alongside Oxford to help them deliver coaching to drivers before they get in the vehicle, but some key components, you know, obvious ones, tyre pressures, payload, you know, do you need to be carrying all the kit that you're carrying on that day? But we also look at what's the optimum speed for an EV, because that's different from an ICE vehicle. So educating drivers about those different driving styles, as well as creature comforts, you know, preconditioning the vehicle, heating the seats and the steering wheel and not the whole cabin. These are all things that will impact the performance of that vehicle and help the council achieve its total cost of ownership model that it's set out in terms of what it expects to achieve. Finally, right, there's quite a few slides on this, but energy management is quite a big thing and it's quite prominent in people's discussions. So we've invested quite a bit of time in developing the metrics that allow Oxford to do that. First thing, a live view. What's going on with the fleet here and now today? What are the battery levels in the fleet? Which ones are charging up? So you can see here is an example of one that is a live battery feed and its range, and you can see that it's charging and how long it's left to charge. So there's a window for the fleet teams and the business teams in there to see just exactly what's going on with the fleet. Critically, and removing the anxiety aspect, we've also got where battery levels fall below critical range, which can be determined by the user. So wherever they see the value of that risk, it can be as high or as low as the client needs, but they'll give them the insight that they see, plus warning notifications that allow those managers to know that perhaps that vehicle's not going to be able to perform operationally as they expected it to do on that day. So a bit of advance warning. And next we're moving into the charging behaviours. So from this, there's a lot of data on here, and I'll break it down, but it's the insight that we pull from it that we work with Oxford to do on first thing. So the first thing that we want to look at is when the vehicle is charging up. Now, for Oxford, I'd say now their highest tariff rate for their electricity is between 4 and 7 in the afternoon. And we know that in June, their electricity rate is going to double from where it is today because of the current energy challenges that are going on. So using this part of the report, we're now able to talk to those drivers who are coming back to the depots at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and just plugging it in. All of their charge points, by the way, are smart chargers. So they all have the capability to set the charging cycles appropriate. So these are the things that we're talking to with the drivers in terms of managing that energy usage for the council. Next, we're looking at long-term battery health. Now, these are commercial vehicles. We know that from a car perspective, perhaps we're not seeing the health degradation that we were expecting, but we're in the new world of commercial here. We don't know what payload, topography, temperature is going to do to those batteries and use case. So here, we're flagging just which vehicles are charging to 100% every single day. And if you'll notice in the column on the very end, the average mileage is about 30 miles for the day. So this vehicle in particular that we're looking at is a 150 mile range vehicle. And so why is it being charged up every day to 100% when it doesn't need to? But the flip side is when they're looking to future-proof their fleet, actually, that vehicle could sit on that charger for one day and is then vacant for 4 other vehicles in the depot. So it's looking at the future-proof as well in terms of the ability of that council not to have to put in more infrastructure to deal with the onboarding of new electric vehicles. And then we get in location. Now, I know there's variation across the country. Oxford are quite lucky that most of their usage is depot-based from a charging perspective. But I'm also working with another council down in Kent, and they have no depot infrastructure. So they're going to rely on the public infrastructure as they start to make their transition. So location of charging and which drivers are using perhaps premium rate charge points that they don't need to, or the planning and the timing of those chargings, again, is provided in this one report just as the insight to give them the information. Moving on, energy consumption, so how that right foot is behaving. So we as an organisation like to get our data from the nervous system of the vehicle. We like accurate data. We don't tend to use algorithms if we can to estimate values and that. And it's a fair challenge to us in our environment that getting this data at the moment is sometimes really difficult to do. The manufacturers don't make it that easy. But these are accurate. So this is the vehicle usage as determined by the vehicle. So we are getting and using for them the total energy consumption. So again, this is starting to map across the costings and what they're actually costing them for doing it. We're also getting the driver behaviour. So these 2 columns are representing the driving energy consumption, but also the energy recovered. And so that's regenerative braking. How well is that driver using the technology to pull back energy into that vehicle operating in an urban environment? So an ideal situation for getting more energy back into that battery. You'll see an empty column, and that's energy other, that's ancillary. We're still working on getting that data. That's the idling in old money, if you like. And that's something that we're actively working to get hold of at the moment. But you're also getting against the averages of performance. So we're mapping against what the vehicle has done to this point and how the driver is getting above or below that. In this example, we're giving kilowatt hours per 100 kilometres, so a negative figure is obviously good. Positive figure is bad. As of the end of this month, we will also have it in the metrics that perhaps we are commonly used to, which is miles per kilowatt hour and sort of things that we would be dealing with. So just re-engineering that. And then just a little bit about where we're going and our ambitions in terms of continuing the journey. We've developed a strategy which we think is where our customers, and telling us where our customers are actually wanting to go. And it's fair to say that we are probably, in the main, around this stage here, down the bottom of this triangle. I still think what we've got is really beneficial. But where we're currently working to, that was delivered in 21. What we're delivering in 2022 is all the things you can see here. I'm going to finish early for you. But what I would say is that it's back to this thing, we keep hearing the word today, collaboration. And I think we recognise as an organisation, we have an organic talent for telematics and what we do, but we're in a changing world where new technologies disrupt us, new requirements for solutions are coming through. So we are actively seeking partnerships from outside specialities that can come in and actually collectively provide the solutions to the end users like yourselves who are running these operational fleets and will need solutions that help them move forward.
Brilliant. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much for your time.